Welcome everyone to another live stream. Hope you're having a great day, great night, wherever you might be. Appreciate you tuning in. We're going to talk about the latest trade market stuff regarding the Lakers. We're only 2 weeks away from the trade deadline at this point, so might be now or never for the Lakers, might be now or never for every other contending team. On top of that, we're going to talk about the Lakers Clippers matchup tonight. Should be a fun one. Will Kawhi Leonard play? Will he not play? Will the Lakers get another guy on an opposing team to come back against them? Maybe. We'll find out about that one. And we'll talk a little bit about Drew Timme and the Lakers' current team as well. You know, they are 10 games above 500 at this point. It might not feel like it, but with an opportunity to beat a crosstown rival tonight, definitely would be a good feeler after their last win over Denver, albeit coming without Nikola Jokic and a few other starters on their team. You know, the vibes are okay right now, could be better. We'll see what they can do tonight, and we're going to preview the matchup. So, beginning with the injury report, the Lakers actually, for the most part, are fairly healthy tonight. Of course, no Austin tonight, no Duthero. We do have an update regarding Austin Reeves, though. A few days ago, it came out that he likely will be back during their upcoming road trip, or rather, current road trip. They're in the midst of an 8-game road trip, if you're not aware. They're on game number 2. Their current road trip goes all the way roughly to the trade deadline. I think exactly to the trade deadline. Let me actually pull up the Lakers' schedule to verify and maybe predict when Austin might come back. So, obviously, tonight we got the Clippers matchup. Saturday, we have a matchup in Dallas. Monday, we have a matchup in Chicago. I don't think Austin will be back for any of these 3 games. The timeline for return for him when we got it a little over a month ago at this point was a 4 to 6 week outlook. So maybe in that 5 to 6 week time frame, maybe around the Washington when they go play in Washington on the 30th, maybe the 1st against New York. That would be a fun game to come back in Madison Square Garden. So maybe kind of predict he will come back around that time frame. I don't see it happening on Saturday night in Dallas. I don't see it happening on Monday night in Chicago. Maybe optimistically in Cleveland or Washington, but I think I would probably point more to that New York game and that Brooklyn game. But that's the injury report. We got DeAndre Ayton tonight after leaving their game the other night with a poke in the eye. Looked pretty painful, but he's back tonight. Got the rest of the supporting cast, Rui Hachimura, obviously LeBron, Luka, the entire bench unit. So, for the most part, pretty healthy. We'll have to wait and see if Kawhi Leonard plays tonight. Right now, he is questionable to play with a knee injury that he suffered and, of course, has been dealing with for many years now at this point. Will he play? Will he not play? I'd put my money on that he probably will play. Of course, it's Lakers. Everyone wants to play against them, beat them. The Clippers are actually playing pretty well right now. In their past 10, they're actually 7-3. So they're one of the hotter teams in the entire NBA. They're trying to make a late playoff push given that they don't own their first round draft picks. So they have no incentive to rest their guys. They have no incentive to lose games and try to tank. They're going to try to win tonight, and they always try to play hard against the Lakers. So that's kind of the matchup preview tonight. Hopefully the Lakers can take it. That would be a good boost to their team morale at this point. Again, in the midst of a 8-game road trip. Now moving on a little bit more to the trade market stuff and maybe who they're targeting, who they've been linked to lately. The latest report, and we've heard a little bit about this one before, does happen to be about Michael Porter Jr. This report coming from Matt Moore of Action Sports Network, if I remember correctly. Let me pull up the actual report and you guys can follow along with me. But yeah, Michael Porter Jr. is a possibility for the Lakers per Matt Moore. The ad is a little bit weird, but he is an actual NBA insider, saying that he's heard a lot about talks between the Lakers and Nets over the past 2 years. And of course, they did the Dorian Finney-Smith trade. They have a pretty good trade relationship. He mentions even Nick Claxton, who I've talked about for over half a year now at this point. I think he would fit the need for them at center, could fit the timeline need. You know, I'm not sure about the fit with Michael Porter Jr. I think it would be a lot of fun offensively, and it definitely would fit offensively. both for the short term with LeBron, Luka, Austin when he comes back. That would pretty much be the ideal catch and shoot threat, the ideal third, fourth option offensively with them. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun, and probably would even help out their team rebounding wise too. He's pretty much an upgraded Rui Hachimura in every way with what they kind of do with Rui and what they like to have him on the court for and around Luka, kind of playing off the ball with them. In that regard, I think it would work. It would be fun to watch and fun to watch him play with them. But in regard to the 3-and-D need, the two-way need on their team, that's not what MPJ would do for them. He's not going to come in and take on difficult matchups on defense. He's not even a good defender. When committed, he's decent, average, but isn't a guy like Herb Jones or Andrew Wiggins that can take on a tough matchup for them, can actually be good defensively, game to game, and pretty consistently. That's not what MPJ would be. On top of that, for what it would take to trade for him, at that point, we'd probably be looking at trading Rui Hachimura with both Vincent and Kleba to simply make the money work. Then probably our final tradable first-round draft pick. So do you want to go that route? Is it worth it? Would he be the missing piece for their team right now and going forward too? Probably not, in my opinion. You know, it's a bigger name to point to. The Lakers always get linked to the bigger names, and whether or not they're for clicks or actually real, who knows? But upside here with MPJ, but more downside in my opinion. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'll answer some questions here from you guys. And I think we do have a super chat here from the notorious CRG. Appreciate that. The question is, saw your video on Misi this morning. Is there any chance that he could become another DeAndre Ayton, being a high draft pick that bounces around? That would be a possibility, I guess. I definitely wouldn't rule it out. Given the fact that he's already on the trade market, according to reports, given that he was a first-round draft pick only 2 years ago, I don't know if I'd compare him to Ayton. You know, Ayton's a very different situation with him being traded pretty early on, but already getting the contract prior to him getting traded. A large part of why Ayton has kind of become the journeyman is because of that contract that he signed through Indiana, Phoenix matching it, giving him the 4-year pretty much max contract, very close to it. That's kind of why Ayton went in the situation and the pathway that he eventually did. I don't know if I'd say that Yves Missi will go that route. He hasn't gotten paid yet. If you would trade for him, he's still on his rookie contract, not on a near max contract like DeAndre Ayton. So wouldn't call it a comparison in that regard. If you're talking about the draft pick scenario, kind of Yves Missi being a 21st overall first-round draft pick, Ayton obviously being the number 1 overall pick back in the Luka Doncic, Trae Young draft. So maybe a little bit of comparison, but very different scenario in my opinion. What you could trade for Yves Missi would simply be Dalton Connect to make the money work. Obviously, you'd have to include more draft compensation and more assets in general. We can actually pull that up to talk about. If we'd make a trade with New Orleans, it would have to look something like, if you're simply trading for Missi, then it would be money-wise simply Missi for Dalton Connect, but I don't think that New Orleans would want that, given that they have a currently underperforming young three-point shooter like Connect already, that being with Jordan Hawkins. I don't think they'd want Connect. I don't think they'd say no to it, I guess, but I'd probably look at something like Yves Missi with a Sadiq Bey, like I showed in that video that you're referring to. Probably at that point with a protected first-round draft pick. Maybe we could get away with a couple of pick swaps at that point. Maybe in 2030, maybe in 2028 with our final tradable second-round draft pick. That's probably what it would look like. I think he could be a viable option for their team, given the fit, given the timeline fit, given that he's the kind of player that Luka likes to play with at the 5. I could see it. I'm definitely not guaranteeing it, but I think it's a viable option for them. They've been linked to him lately. I think prior to them signing DeAndre Ayton, there was a report from, I think Brett Seigel. I can't quote it off the top of my head, but regardless, Messi is linked to the trade market, has been supplanted by Derek Queen, who's really the center of their team going forward. So if not the Lakers, I wouldn't be shocked if a different team might trade for him. But appreciate the question, appreciate the super chat. Answer a few more here. I don't know why my chat box is not working to highlight comments right now. Let me try to fix that real quick. Anyway, I'll get to a few comments here. Maybe going to DeAndre Ayton, MPJ. A lot of trade talk you guys are talking about. You guys were talking about when I was referring to MPJ. Not a good defender, but MPJ does rebound. Correct, yeah, that's kind of the one good thing about him, other than obviously the offense and what you might not like about the defense. Kind of the happy medium there is that he is a good rebounding wing, averaging over 7 rebounds per game this season. So would be an upgrade to Hachimura in pretty much every regard, but still not a perfect fit. Number 1 pick. Hate to say it, but we aren't winning anything until LeBron retires. I don't really like that viewpoint because, I don't think he's going to be with their team for much longer, given the fact that obviously they won a championship with LeBron. I don't know if this current iteration of their team is simply possible to win regardless, whether or not you have LeBron on it. Not a championship anyway, given their lack of two-way talent, their lack of 3-and-D ability. It's simply not what Luka needs around him, not what LeBron needs around him. So the problems go far beyond LeBron, and Luka, any fit issues between them, which there aren't really any big ones in my opinion. Not the perfect fit, but I think they can make it work if you have good complementary pieces around them and a good supporting cast around them too, which they unfortunately don't. Yeah, rip Kobe. Man, I do miss Kobe. 20 years ago today, I think, is when Kobe dropped 81. If only we played the Toronto Raptors today, not last week. That would have been a pretty good callback to that moment. Yeah, I almost forgot. Let's actually talk a little bit about Drew Timme too. I've been really, really impressed with Drew Timme, as I think all of you guys have been too. During the past 3 games, he's made an impact in every game, whether it's been with scoring, passing, rebounding, even not playing terrible on defense. Obviously, isn't a great defender. A few moments you can pick out, and a few moments that I actually did show in a recent video about him, that he will tend to get targeted and isn't the best defensive fit at center for them. But I really like the second quarter lineups they've made him a part of, routinely turning to the 5-man combo of Timme, Ayton, Jared Vanderbilt, Marcus Smart, and LeBron. That's worked out pretty well for them. The other game against, I think, Toronto, yep, it was Toronto, they went on a 14-4 run with that lineup in only 2.5 minutes. I think I actually have that lineup saved on my photo editing software here. Yeah, went a little bit haywire, but yeah, this lineup with LeBron, Smart, Vando, Timme, and Ayton, it's worked pretty well. This was the plus-minus rating for their last game against the Denver Nuggets. Timme obviously had a good plus-minus rating. Against Denver, they went on a 9-0 run immediately after Timme came in. after Timme came in and dropped 5 points pretty much immediately, making the 3-point shot and then getting the and one where he didn't make the free throw. But something about this lineup is really clicking right now. Let me change the height to fix my OCD real quick. But yeah, Timme offering kind of the floor spacing at the 4, Vando and Smart making up for the lack of defensive ability, mainly the lack of perimeter defense from Timme and Ayton here, not being very switchable. But if you put Vanderbilt and Smart around them with at least a decent rim protector like Ayton, up until this point it's proven to work. Yes, against the Toronto Raptors and a hurt Denver Nuggets team, but it's worked pretty well so far. Not going to be a lineup that plays 10 to 15 minutes per game for their team, but in little bits and pieces, it's shown to work. I like what they've shown during that early second quarter. They've given their team a burst in both games that they've used this lineup so far. Timme has had a 21-point game now with this lineup, simply when they were playing injured against Portland, but last game dropped 9 points off the bench, made that 3-point shot, made a few field goals around the rim. So Timme's been pretty good. I've been impressed. How have you guys felt about Drew Timme? Do you think he might end up being elevated from the two-way contract up to their 15th and final spot on the roster? Or what do you think will come of Drew Timme? We have another super chat here from Greenlight Transport. Appreciate it. I'm having trouble with my comment highlighting right now, so I'll just have to read your comment. But the comment is, I think a rim defender is more important than 3-and-D. I don't know if I'd necessarily say more important. I think they're both important. I don't know if Ayton is really the answer, not even short term. If they truly want to make the best iteration of this team, I think they probably would have to get a better rim protector, would have to get a better fitting 5 around Luka Doncic. You know, it's kind of weird when Jackson Hayes comes off the bench and arguably fits better around Luka and LeBron. Mainly Luka, mainly as the lob threat and the rim runner, guy that plays with a bit more energy compared to Ayton. Yes, Ayton's obviously more talented and does put up better numbers, but yeah, you can argue that a rim protector and that good fitting 5 around Luka is very important. I would say for the long term, that should be one of, if not their top priority, maybe. But I still think that for both this team and what their team doesn't have much of, 3-and-D talent, the only one you can make an argument for at this point is Jake LaRavia, who will make a few 3-point shots one game and then go 0 for 5 from 3 the next game. Regardless, I like LaRavia's defense. He's proven to be a pretty consistent defender. But this team doesn't have much 3-and-D talent. It doesn't have much two-way talent. I think that's definitely their number one need right now. I agree with you that a rim protector, a rim defender is very important. It's something that they've won with, obviously. It's something that they've built their team around at times with Anthony Davis, and before that, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, back to the NBA bubble days. They definitely should try to add that to their team. I've talked about it with Yves Missi. I've talked about it with Nick Claxton, other targets that would provide that, plus the good fit and timeline fit around Luka. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. I don't know if you can definitively say that a center is more important than a 3-and-D wing. I think you can say that they're both very important and two things their team doesn't really have right now. Oh, we have another follow-up from Greenlight Transport. Again, I can't highlight your comment. I apologize for that, but I'll replay it. The comment is, if we get Herb and Claxton before February 5th, Chip. Honestly, I think you could definitely make an argument for it at that point, given that from the tangent I just went on, they're the two needs that their team doesn't really have filled. Let's say they trade DeAndre Ayton and Claxton would take over his spot at the starting 5 for them. I think that would be a direct rim protection upgrade. I think that would be a defensive upgrade in general. More rim protection, more switchability, a better lob threat, a better rim runner, a better passer. Definitely not as good of a mid-range kind of floater guy offensively. Little bit less offensive output from Claxton, but a whole lot more fit around Luka Doncic improvement, better rim protection again, rim running, I sound like a broken record with that. I think that would be an upgrade. Herb Jones obviously would be a great fit for their team, defensive wise, 3-point shooting wise. If we get the Herb Jones from the 23-24 season, where I think he shot 42% from the 3-point line. Regardless, you would give them that great wing defender that would obviously be in their starting lineup, be an upgrade over both Marcus Smart and Jake Arabia. I think that would be an immediate fit. I think at that point they could actually contend both defensively and even athletic wise with teams like San Antonio. Maybe not quite up to OKC, that would be yet to be seen, but I think they definitely have a better shot at it at that point. The fit would be much better. The team would be actually organized and balanced. A word I often use is balance. Their team doesn't have much of it. At that point, I think, yeah, you could argue that they'd be at that top tier level, which they're not really at this point. Yeah, two of my favorite trade targets regardless. I could talk about them all day, but that's kind of my summarized thoughts on it. But appreciate the super chat, appreciate the comment. We have another super chat here from, from Jim Carter 8. The comment is, how come you don't do any live gameplays? I don't know if I have the perfect setup for it. I've thought about doing it. I still lightly plan on doing it in the future. Definitely more post games. Obviously I've done only the post game videos so far. That's kind of been my niche, but mostly the setup. I thought about doing it. I don't have the multiple monitors in front of me to make it work, go back and forth between the chat, and actually be able to watch the game and do a true kind of play-by-play that would feel right. Not simply me kind of doing it with not the proper equipment. If I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. I want to actually give good feedback during the game, be able to go back and forth between the comments and the game. Most importantly, be able to watch the game and analyze the game so I can properly talk about it post-game. That's kind of why. I'd love to do it eventually. I'd love to interact with you guys during the game. I think that'd be a lot of fun. React to the highlights, react to the lowlights, or whatever it might be. Yes, tentatively in the future, I'd love to do it. Just, I can't give a for sure date of when that might be. But appreciate the super chat, appreciate the support. Obviously, you watch the channel, so greatly appreciated. But yeah, we do have the Lakers-Clippers matchup tonight. The Clippers they're hot right now. They're 7-3 in their past 10. Will Kawhi Leonard play tonight? Regardless, even without him, they've been playing pretty well. James Harden's been playing well. Zubats is back and has been playing better than he did earlier this season. Will they come out and beat the Lakers tonight? The Clippers need a win. They're currently in 10th. The Lakers are currently in 5th, albeit with kind of a tiebreaker. If they would get beat tonight and Phoenix would win tonight, they would fall to 6th, possibly to 7th. I don't know if the T-Wolves play tonight. So even 10 games above 500, the Lakers are in that 2-5 crunch again. I can't wait until, hopefully, fingers crossed, the NBA expands and the T-Wolves move to the East, or maybe they do a complete super conference and don't make the 1-8 playoff spots divided by West and East, but simply make it by the entire NBA. You know, going off topic a little bit, but that's kind of my long-term hope with it. The West is completely stacked at this point, and it does need to be shuffled out a little bit. All right, I'll get back to a few more comments here. Again, my chat highlighting thing is not working right now. I'd love to highlight a few comments, but I'll just have to respond to them from the live feed. Hopefully you guys can keep up with me. Yeah, you guys are arguing about LeBron in the chat. Let's get back on topic here a little bit. Who cares about the rooting for one player or the other? Let's all be Laker fans at this point. Need Khalil Ware on the team. I don't even want to talk about Khalil Ware as the trade target because I'd love it, but it's not going to happen. I don't see Miami trading him to the Lakers. I don't see them trading him for anything that the Lakers have to offer. Maybe to a rebuilding team that would give them a insanely high trade offer, something like multiple first round draft picks, but purely from a skill set and talent standpoint, I think he'd be a great fit. I want the Lakers to draft him very badly. If you remember back to the 2024 draft day videos, he was my number one trade target or number one draft target that year. Unfortunately, probably not on the table though at this point. Oh, we have another super chat here from Looney Tunes asking or saying do a trade for Rui Nathan for Wiggins and Khalil Ware. Again, apologize I can't highlight your comment. I'll replay it there, but appreciate the super chat. Do a trade for Rui and Aiton for Wiggins and Khalil Ware. Again, with what I was talking about with Khalil Ware, I'd love it. I don't know if it would be a possibility. We can show it here though. I'll try to address it. I'd love both Wiggins and Khalil Ware on the Lakers team. I think they would directly fill the needs I talked about with the previous super chat. The 3-and-D wing, Wiggins would obviously fill that. The long-term center option and the center that fits around Luka. I think Khalil Ware would fit that. Now, to make a trade for them, I don't think it would be very easy. Simply trading for Andrew Wiggins might take a majority of the trade assets we have left at this point. To get him, you'd have to trade very likely Rui Hachimura with Gabe Vincent and probably their final tradable first round draft pick. You could maybe protect it and make the trade work, but at that point, you don't have any trade assets left for Khalil Ware. If you're going to throw him in, what more do you have to offer them? We can make the money work. We can throw in Dalton Connect, but I don't think Miami would take Dalton Connect, Gabe Vincent, and Rui Hachimura, even with a completely unprotected first round draft pick for both Andrew Wiggins and Khalil Ware. Maybe if we waited until the summer when we have 3 tradable first round draft picks, then we could talk. Then we could throw in our 2033 and or our 2026 first round draft pick. We gain access to that during draft week when the NBA calendar year flips. At that point, it would be a much better conversation. It would be more realistic. Even if you could trade for Khalil Ware at this point, given the drama between the comments between himself and head coach Eric Spoelstra, maybe they move on from him, but I think it's simply more the tough heat culture, quote unquote, him trying to instill that in Khalil Ware, him trying to create better habits, create a better player in general with him. I don't think they'll trade him. Maybe it comes down to it, but I don't really see another Jonathan Kuminga situation like with Golden State right now, to the point where the head coach and him did not get along. They went back and forth repeatedly over a number of years, and it's led to Kuminga demanding a trade and wanting to be traded. I don't quite see that happening with Khalil Ware. And again, even if it would happen, the trade price would be very likely astronomical in my opinion. But I appreciate the comment, and yeah, I think they're both great fits. I think they're ideally what the Lakers should go after, even if it's not directly those two and directly Wiggins or Khalil Ware. Try to get guys like that. Rui and Aiton are not going anywhere this year. Interesting. I don't know if I would guarantee that. In fact, I wouldn't even get close to it. I would say that Rui is a lot more likely to go somewhere than Aiton, given that Rui is a fairly valuable expiring contract. The fact that, yes, he is an expiring contract, so you can have financial flexibility if you're trading him to a contender that's not really in a rebuild and cares about every little $1 million that fits underneath the first apron, second apron, whatever it might be. That's one pro with him. On top of it, obviously, he's a fairly productive player. Isn't a 3-and-D player, isn't a two-way player, but is a very good offensive player. Is a guy that's still only 27 and could be a fit for a 3 to 5 year outlook if you think you would be in that time frame for your team. But I think Rui's more likely to be traded. Even at best, I'd still only call it maybe a little bit more than 50-50. But yeah, I don't. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but it's still a possibility for both Rui and DeAndre Ayton, in my opinion. How are we getting Jaren Jackson Jr. while getting Claxton and Herb? Yeah, you're not. At best, I think you could get Claxton or Herb. I don't think you could get those two and another guy like JJJ. It's not going to happen. Lakers, again, have one tradable first round draft pick. What are you going to do with one first other than one high quality role player? You're not going to get a borderline star player, a legitimate all star like Triple J, with another good role player like Claxton or Herb. It's just not realistic. Again, if we had multiple tradable first round draft picks, like we will, if we keep our 2031 first and then gain the 2033 and the 2026 first round draft pick, maybe at that point, but not right now, unfortunately. A little Drew Timmy talk. Again, I wish I could highlight your comments. I don't know what's going up with my chat box thing right now. But one comment saying, I don't see Timmy elevated to a spot. He has poor defensive skills. Yeah, we've talked about the defense with Drew Timmy. I think that's the one thing holding him back, unfortunately. Even with that, though, you got a guy like Bobby Portis, for example, who has never been a great defender. Yes, I'd say he is a little bit better than Drew Timmy. But if Drew Timmy can kind of be that to even a little bit better than a poor man's version of Bobby Portis, offer the 3-point shooting, the floor spacing, offering the good rebounding, simply energy off the bench, I think that would be a decent comparison for a Drew Timmy career outlook. Be a guy that could be ninth, 10th man coming off the bench, not quite the sixth man that Bobby Portis is, but kind of think that optimistically with Drew Timmy. We have another couple super chats here. One from the notorious CRG. Appreciate it again. Again, I wish I could highlight your comment, but I'll read it out here. The comment is, wondering more about the motor on Misi. Don't want to trade DeAndre for DeAndre. How impossible would getting Misi and Herb be? Yeah, I touched on that a little bit before. I think it would be pretty difficult. I think it's much more realistic than what I showed with the Miami Heat trade with Andrew Wiggins and Khalil Ware, for example. I think if we would go the route of trading our current first round draft pick for multiple of them, this is something I've talked about a lot lately. Let me actually show that example through a trade and we'll go through the entire thing. So let's say the Lakers trade their 2031 first. Let me unprotect that. To the Brooklyn Nets for 2 or 3 of their protected first round draft picks that they have. For example, they have a 27 first round draft pick that the Rockets have the right to swap, which will very likely happen. So you're probably getting a 27 first round draft pick via Houston that is in that 20 to 30 range. Let's say they get that first round draft pick. Then they get a 28 first round draft pick that's protected 1 through 8 from Philadelphia. Then maybe another one, I kind of doubt it. If not a first round draft pick that's protected, we could get maybe a couple of second round draft picks, maybe get back one of our own second round draft picks from Brooklyn. Let's say we do that first. We trade our one tradable first round draft pick for 2 protected ones and maybe a second round draft pick or 2. Then we have the trade assets to make that kind of deal work. We take what we got here, and then we can simply add the Pelicans to the trade then too. We get our 2 more tradable first round draft picks with a couple second round draft picks. Then we trade Rui Hachimura to New Orleans. Did I trade him to New Orleans? Let me trade him to New Orleans. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm all doing here too. We trade him to New Orleans. Then we get Herb. And then we add in Yves Missi too. What's the money look like there? Yeah, that would work financially. Then we take the draft picks we got from Brooklyn. We take that and send it to New Orleans. We take the other one and send it to New Orleans too. And heck, we get every draft pick that we got from Brooklyn as part of that first round draft pick trade, we sent it all to New Orleans. At that point, we could probably make the trade work. It would definitely be a lot of draft picks to get them, but that's probably what it would take. Two protected first round draft picks and then a couple of second round draft picks with Rui Hachimura. Would you think that would be worth it? That's up for debate here, but that's probably what it would take in my opinion. I think it would help the long term, given that we're getting two guys that are 27 years old or younger, Herb being 27, Misi being 21. From that standpoint, you can make the argument for it. I don't know, again, if everyone would agree with doing that. And I think the second part of your comment was worrying about Eve Misi being a DeAndre Ayton with the motor, the issues with that. I don't know how much about motor related issues Eve Misi really has. I know there have been some comments about it here and there. I can't say I'm a religious New Orleans Pelicans watcher. I don't think many people are apart from Pelican fans, and maybe not even them at this point. But from what I've seen with Eve Misi, that's not been a big complaint with him. The bigger complaint is probably the simply rawness with his game. He's not fully developed yet. He is only 21 in his second year in the NBA. Isn't a three-point shooting threat. Isn't very developed offensively in general, apart from dunking, getting lob threats, or getting alley-oops to be a lob threat, putbacks around the rim. Doesn't really do that much. That's more the problem, in my opinion. If you're going to try to get him and add him to a team that's trying to win, I don't know how much he'll be able to offer in the short term, apart from simply playing off of Luka and LeBron, mainly Luka, getting the lobs from him again, offering decent rim protection and good rim running ability. That's more the worry with me. Not really a motor issue, definitely not to a 8-in level in my opinion. One game he might play hard and you'll get great rim protection. The next game you'll get a pouty player that wants to touch the ball, and if he's not touching it, he's mad. I wouldn't directly compare Misi to that. So hopefully that answers your question or comment. It would be complicated, but theoretically, yes, I think they can make it work. Maybe they don't even have to do the draft pick trade to make it work. Maybe the Pelicans are bluffing about the trade price they want for her, but realistically, I think it probably would take something kind of complicated like that. All right. We have another super chat here from Always Busy Bee. The question or comment is, we're over-focused on defense. Need bench scoring. Again, I'd love to highlight your comments. I'll have to just replay it here. But yeah, I don't know if we're over-focused on defense per se, given that the Lakers are currently 25th in defensive rating, and I think I actually have that pulled up. In the last 10, they're 22nd in defensive rating. I actually meant to talk about this anyway. But overall, they are 25th in defensive rating. 2 months ago, they were actually 15th. So that's a 10-spot drop-off in only a couple of months. So I don't know if we're over-focused on defense. I think some people might be a bit too focused on only defense with a player that might not fit offensively or might not fit the long-term outlook. I think you kind of have a balance with it. Can't simply target a guy like Vanderbilt, who's very good defensively, and I love Vando, the energy he plays with, but not a good three-point shooter, not a guy that fits offensively with Luka, LeBron, pretty much anything offensive related to their scheme, or any team scheme for that fact. That's an obvious problem. If you're only going after guys like that to try to improve your defense, it can maybe help your team, but also hurt your team. So from that standpoint, I'd say, yeah, we can become a little bit too hyper-fixated on it, but at the end of the day, when you're 25th in defense, even though they're a good clutch defense, they can play defense when they want to, they definitely need more guys that care about defense while at the same time fit their offense too. So hopefully that gives you a good point of reference for where I come from with it. We have another super chat here from Looney Tunes. Appreciate it. Asking or saying, would we need a 3-and-D player if we got MPJ and Claxton? Again, kind of going back to the what we can get through a trade. I don't know if we can make a trade work for both Claxton and MPJ. Uh, Again, I think it would probably take something like what I showed before with the three-team trade with us, Brooklyn, and New Orleans. Initially trading our 2031 first to Brooklyn to get multiple first round draft picks and more draft compensation. If you go that route, I think you can make it work. Um, I don't know if they'd want to do that. I guess it could become a two-team trade at that point. If we would trade our 2031 first, and at that point they wouldn't give us draft picks back though, we'd have to find a different team to do the same thing that I showed before with Brooklyn, trading the 2031 first for multiple lesser first round draft picks. You'd have to do that first and then put that toward a Brooklyn trade. I don't think we could. I mean, even money wise too. That's another thing to factor in. You got MPJ who makes over 38 million. Then if you throw in Nick Claxton with him, making over 25 million, at that point you got to match 63 million in money through a trade. So to even get there, we'd have to trade Rui, we'd have to trade um, Vanderbilt, we'd have to trade Kleba, have to trade Vincent, and even them together, that's only 52 million. On top of that, you'd have to throw in a guy like Austin, DeAndre, something like that to make the money work. And at that point, you have a big time roster problem. You're trading five different guys for two in return. You can't go over the first apron right now if you're the Lakers. So it doesn't really work through a trade. I like where your head's at in terms of trying to address the needs on their team and trying to get a guy like Claxton who fits the long term outlook, MPJ who would be a fun target offensively, but I don't see that one happening. Hopefully that gives you a good detail of what it would kind of look like though. Oh, we have another super chat here from RGNCA, RGNCAL 4872. Appreciate it. Again, I can't highlight the comments. Apologize for that. My chat's not working. But the comment is they're only trading for expiring and team options. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that mindset. That's more the safe route for them to go. We've heard reports about that. We've heard conflicting reports as well. Obviously, what I've talked about earlier with them being linked to MPJ, not under an expiring contract, linked to Nick Claxton, also not under an expiring contract, linked to even Jonathan Kuminga, kind of under an expiring contract, but not really. Overall, though, yeah, it definitely would be the safer route for them to go, trading for only expiring contracts and guys on team options or not under contract or not under a big contract long term. That would fit them preserving their assets for maybe a trade this summer. Something else I've talked about. If they would keep their 2031 first and then get two more tradable first round draft picks later in June when the NBA calendar year flips. We've heard about that. It does make sense for their team. They could kind of play the happy medium game, trading for a lesser trade target that wouldn't cost a first round draft pick right now, kind of showing that, hey, we're trying to improve the team. We will do something a bit smaller to help right now, but not hurt our future trade flexibility and our ability to go all in for a bigger trade target. Yeah, I think that would be the safe route for them to go. I think that would be the kind of Rob Pelinka-ish move to make, given that they swung big and got Luka Doncic. You're very likely not going to do that twice within a 1 year time frame. They don't even have the assets to do that right now. So yeah, I'd say it's more likely for them to go that route, making a Ochai Agbaji type trade, something that would at most cost a second round draft pick, a Keon Ellis, somebody like that. Yeah, I agree with you. I wouldn't guarantee that being the only route for them to take. I don't think anyone thought they would even trade for Dorian Finney-Smith last year, let alone Luka Doncic. So definitely can't completely write it off. Can't write it off them trading their first round draft pick, whether it's directly for a player in return, whether it's for more first round protected first round draft picks like I showed. Not completely guaranteed and not completely set, but yeah, I would say it's the safer option and maybe the easier route for them to go. Oh, we have another super chat here from the notorious CRG. Appreciate it, my guy. Again, I can't highlight your comment. I apologize, but the comment is, "You are actually my favorite Laker channel. But have you ever contacted or interacted with Lakers Nation or Jovan Buha?" No, I've not interacted with them from a YouTube format. I guess I've interacted a bit with Jovan Buha on Twitter. I think they're obviously both great channels. They both do a lot for the Lakers community. But up until this point, no, have not collaborated or anything like that. We all kind of do our own thing for the most part. I know Jovan and Trevor Lane, I think they do something collectively together. But no, nothing interaction wise, nothing really collaboration wise, maybe in the future, but appreciate the super chat, appreciate the comment. Try to put out good content that you guys enjoy. Try to put out stuff that is worthwhile to upload and worthwhile to my time, your time to watch, and for me to make. So genuinely appreciate it. Genuinely appreciate the comments like this. Helps me keep going. You guys watching, supporting the channel, keeping me in the algorithm. Wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So genuinely do appreciate it. We'll get to a few more comments. If you guys want to talk about more trades, want to talk about the matchup tonight, want to talk about Drew Timme, I'll get to a few more of them. Hope you guys are having a good day or a great night, though. I know you're all from different parts of the world. It's crazy to think about, but hopefully you're all enjoying the day. Few more comments. Let me pick out a couple. I am way behind in the chat. How would I feel about a Lonzo and Gabe Vincent swap? To note, Lonzo has a team option on his contract. Trading with Cleveland is very difficult. We've heard a few trade rumors regarding DeAndre Hunter, a guy that pretty much every year gets linked back to their team. Somebody that they technically did draft back in 2018, that being the Lakers, with their draft pick that they traded to the Pelicans as part of that trade. But trading with Cleveland, who is a second apron team, they're in salary cap hell. They can't take back money through a trade. They can't trade they can't trade multiple players in the same trade. I think it would be pretty difficult. I also don't know about Lonzo Ball at this point, having a very poor year. Not doing what they hope from a three-point shooting standpoint. I think he's shooting below 30% or right around that mark. He's stayed fairly healthy to his credit, but hasn't looked like the pre-injury version of himself from Chicago, New Orleans, the latter part of the Laker days. I think it would be an interesting trade to make. I think it would be fun if we got the Lonzo Ball that can be a good defender, a guy that can push the pace and bring energy to your team. Yeah, maybe, but I think it would be a complicated trade and maybe not the best use of trading Gabe Vincent, but fun idea. Has Rob Pelinka been a good GM? That's a tough, loaded question. If you're talking about their win-loss record while he's been here, he's been okay. They've won a championship with him. They've made it to the playoffs more often than not, apart from 1 year. But if you kind of dissect every single move he's made or has not made, whether they're entirely his fault or not, I definitely wouldn't say he's been a great general manager. I don't know if I'd call him a terrible one like a lot of people tend to pinpoint him as. I'd simply say he has been a very frustrating general manager, making the moves that he really maybe shouldn't make, i.e. the Westbrook trade, whether that again was entirely him, maybe it was pressured by other people too. Regardless, that's one thing to point to. The moves that he has not made, whether you're talking about Westbrook trades that he maybe waited a bit too long to make, whether you're talking about trades that he could have made instead of Westbrook. Even after that point, if he should have made trades during the 22 season, the 24 or 23-24 year where he didn't make a trade, waiting another year to trade D'Angelo Russell for Dorian Finney-Smith, kind of wasting a year for them, not really putting the best parts around LeBron and Anthony Davis, I would point to that. So not a great GM, not a terrible one, a frustrating one in my opinion. But yeah, that could we could go down a big rabbit hole with that one. Few more comments here. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. I've seen a lot of great comments. I appreciate all the super chats. Hopefully the Lakers get a win tonight too. Man, are we arguing about LeBron in the chat yet? Y'all need to move on. Yeah, commenting about trading that first round draft pick for 2 firsts helps them avoid the Stepien rule. Yeah, if you would trade the first round draft pick, their 2031 first, and then get back a first round draft pick in a year that they don't have their first round draft pick, that could actually open up more draft picks for your team too. I think I actually have a highlighted, maybe a saved graph to show that. Let me try to find it. Yeah, so hopefully you guys can all see this with me. The Lakers right now, they own their 2026 first round draft pick, but they can't trade it because they already traded their 2027 first round draft pick to Utah. But let's say they get back a 2027 first round draft pick, that would immediately let them trade their 26th first round draft pick and their 2031 first round draft pick. And if they would then get a 2029 first round draft pick back too, whether it's protected, unprotected, not even their draft pick itself, they could then trade their 2030 first round draft pick and their 2032 first round draft pick too. So kind of complicated, but yeah, a lot of pathways they could go with that if they would trade their 2031 first, trading it for multiple protected first round draft picks. If they get back the right draft pick years in return, that can open up a whole lot of trade options for their team. Couple more comments. I keep seeing so many LeBron comments. Y'all are crazy. Yeah, following up on your comment though about the draft picks. Yeah, if you trade the 2031 first and get back the 27, 29, any draft pick year they don't currently have, that could give them immediately up to 3, 4, possibly even 5 tradable first round draft picks. So definitely not a bad option for them. You'd be lowering the value of the draft picks you have a little bit, getting protected first round draft picks rather than that one unprotected pick. But in the grand scheme of things, I think you'd get more trade viability, you'd get more trade assets, you'd definitely improve your ability of making a bigger trade. All right, one more comment. That's a wild trade that I'm not going to dissect, but can we trade Gabe, Connect, and Maxey for Ellis, Ware, Herb, and Nick Richards, or one of those? Maybe one or two, but for that trade package, you're definitely not going to get a Khalil Ware or Herb Jones for Maxey, Connect, and Gabe, even with the first round draft pick. You could trade Connect and maybe a first round pick swap for Keon Ellis if Sacramento feels nice and if they want to trade him to their team rather than a different team. You could probably trade for Nick Richards. I wouldn't really put him as a good trade target, barring them trading DeAndre Ayton and they need to fill their either backup or starting center spot. Nick Richards could be a decent backup, but again, not a high profile trade target. Okay, here's a good final interesting question to end on. Again, I can't highlight comments. I apologize. My chat box isn't working right now. But do I think that Luka can be the best player on a championship team? Personally, I think he can. I think the fact that the Mavericks made it to the NBA Finals, Luka has made it to a couple different conference finals already too. I think he's shown that he can be the best player on a championship team. I think you have to have the right fitting team around him, obviously, as shown by that 24 Mavericks team post trade deadline. Getting Daniel Gafford, getting PJ Washington, having the two-way talent around him like Derek Jones, Josh Green, PJ Washington, Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford, having the good sidekick that he likes playing with, Kyrie Irving. I think you can I think you can point to that and say that yes, he can. If they didn't run into an absolutely stacked Celtics team that year that had no injury problems with Porzingis, they were fully healthy. That's a team that I don't know who could beat really in the past half decade now. Probably the best team in the past half decade, the best championship team in my opinion. If they don't run into them and if they instead run into the 25 OKC Thunder, I think that one maybe goes to 7 and the Mavericks could win, given that they beat the Thunder in the previous year when they made it to the NBA Finals. I think Luka has shown the ability to be an NBA Finals type of player that can lead a team to that point. So, what's to say that if you put the right team around him and a very similar team to that he couldn't win a championship? I think he could. And not to mention that he made it that far at only 25 years old, too. So, LeBron didn't win a championship until what? He turned 27, 26 maybe, where Luka's currently at right now. Michael Jordan didn't win one until he turned 27, I think, or 28. Yeah, we might be a bit impatient and we tend to get frustrated with the generational talents that take a while to win, but sometimes it takes a little bit longer and with the right fits around them. Luka's had a pretty complicated journey. The Mavericks didn't always put the best talent around him. The one time they did, he made it to the NBA Finals. The year after that, they traded him. They had Nico Harrison, and that was quite the situation to navigate. I think he's shown that he can be. I don't think it's even that far out of the realm of possibility. Just putting the right fits, having the right team direction with him, I think you can do it. I think he can do it too. So hopefully that answers the question there. Appreciate all the questions, the super chats. Appreciate all you guys tuning in. Hopefully I answered all your questions and gave you guys some good information, gave you guys some good things to think about. But I think that's going to wrap it up. We got Lakers Clippers tonight. Hopefully the Lakers win, get 11 games above 500, beat the Clippers, beat our crosstown rival. Don't let them have anything to talk about. Move them out of playing tournament contention. They're currently in the 10th seed. You know, I even hope Kawhi Leonard plays tonight so we get a fully, fairly healthy matchup. Obviously, no Austin Reeves, but Kawhi Leonard playing, James Harden playing, they're playing pretty well. Would be a pretty good test for the Lakers at this point. They're playing a little bit better lately. You know, if LeBron and Luka can pull it off and continue doing what they have been doing lately, that would be a definitely good team morale boost. So hopefully you guys enjoy the game. Have a good rest of your day or night, wherever you might be. Appreciate you watching. Appreciate you tuning in. And I think that'll do it. So have a good one.